The day I almost lost everything started not with a dramatic collapse, but with the quiet, suffocating realization that I was utterly invisible to the world. I was holding a faded eviction notice in my trembling hands, staring at a bank balance that showed less than $50, when a desperate scream shattered the quiet afternoon outside my apartment door. Throwing the door open, I saw my quiet neighbor, Clara, backed against the hallway wall, her shoulders tense and her eyes wide with genuine fear as a towering, aggressive man invaded her personal space, his voice loud and demanding as he refused to take no for an answer. Without thinking, fueled by a sudden surge of protective instinct, I stepped into the corridor, grabbed Clara's shoulder, looked the stranger dead in the eye, and firmly declared that she was my girlfriend and he needed to back off right now. What happened next changed the course of my life forever, as Clara did not deny it, but instead reached down, wrapped her fingers tightly through mine, and whispered under her breath for me to not take it back. If this story touches your soul and reminds you of the quiet strength we find in one another, please take a moment to like this video, leave a heartfelt comment, share it with someone who might need a reminder of hope, and subscribe to our channel to join our growing community of compassion and second chances. To understand how two relative strangers ended up standing hand in hand in a sunlit apartment hallway pretending to be a couple, you have to understand the quiet isolation that had defined my life for the past year. My name is Julian, and 6 months prior, my small graphic design firm went bankrupt after a major client defaulted on a massive contract, leaving me carrying a mountain of debt that swallowed my savings whole. I had moved into this modest, sun-washed apartment complex on the outskirts of the city because it was the only place I could barely afford, spending my days sending out endless job applications and my nights staring at the ceiling, overwhelmed by shame. Clara lived just across the hall, a soft-spoken woman who worked as an archivist at the local historical society, someone I only knew through polite nods in the elevator and the faint, beautiful sound of acoustic guitar music that occasionally drifted from her living room on quiet Sunday afternoons. We were two solitary planets orbiting in the same small hallway, each carrying heavy burdens that we kept carefully hidden behind polite smiles and hurried greetings. On that bright Tuesday afternoon, the harsh daylight pouring through the hallway windows exposed raw vulnerabilities that neither of us had intended to share with the world. The man harassing Clara was her ex-fiancé, a wealthy and entitled corporate lawyer named Marcus who clearly was not accustomed to being dismissed or forgotten. He had cornered her near the mailboxes, his shadow blocking the warm afternoon light, insisting that she talk to him and demanding that she return the engagement ring she had left behind months ago when she finally gathered the courage to walk away from his controlling behavior. When I blurted out that clumsy lie, claiming Clara was my girlfriend, I fully expected her to step away from me or clarify the truth, but the moment her hand locked into mine, the shift in energy was instantaneous and profound. Her hand was cold and shaking, but her grip was fiercely determined, anchoring both of us in that intense, breathless moment. Marcus sneered at me, looking down at my worn canvas jacket and tired eyes with undisguised contempt, asking if this was really the best she could do after everything they had built together. I stood my ground, pulling Clara subtly behind me, feeling her warm breath against my shoulder as I told him in a calm, unwavering voice that he was trespassing on private property and needed to leave before I called the building manager. Something in my quiet resolve must have convinced him, because after a long, tense stare, Marcus spat out a bitter laugh, adjusted his expensive coat, and stormed out into the sunny courtyard, leaving behind a heavy silence that hung between us like a suspended promise. When the heavy glass doors at the end of the hall finally clicked shut, I immediately tried to pull my hand back, stammering an apology for stepping into her personal business and making such an absurd claim on the spot. But Clara did not let go right away. Instead, she tightened her grip for one brief, meaningful second, her brown eyes shining with unshed tears as she looked up at me with a mixture of immense relief and profound exhaustion. She thanked me in a quiet, breathless voice, explaining that Marcus had been trailing her for weeks, showing up unannounced and making her feel unsafe in her own home, and that my sudden intervention had given her the anchor she desperately needed to stand up to him. As the adrenaline began to fade, the warm afternoon sun bathed the hallway in golden light, illuminating the stark reality of our situation, and I awkwardly revealed the eviction notice still crumpled in my back pocket, confessing that I was hardly a hero, just a guy who was about to be homeless by the end of the month. Clara looked at the piece of paper, then at my face, and instead of walking back into her safe apartment, she invited me inside for a cup of tea, extending a simple gesture of warmth that marked the true beginning of our journey together. Sitting in her sunlit living room, surrounded by shelves of old books, potted plants, and vintage framed maps, I found myself opening up to Clara in a way I had not opened up to anyone since my business collapsed. I told her about the crushing weight of failure, the embarrassment of avoiding calls from bill collectors, and the terrifying feeling of drifting through life without a purpose or a safety net. In return, Clara shared the subtle, psychological trap of her past relationship, explaining how Marcus had slowly eroded her confidence, making her believe she was incapable of surviving on her own until she finally broke free and moved to this quiet building to rebuild her sense of self. We realized that despite our vastly different backgrounds, we were both recovering from deep, invisible wounds, trying to rebuild our lives from scratch in the very same hallway. What started as a fake romantic shield against an overbearing ex slowly transformed into a genuine, unshakable bond grounded in mutual respect, shared vulnerability, and a quiet understanding that neither of us had to carry our heavy burdens completely alone anymore. Over the next 2 weeks, our lives became unexpectedly intertwined in the most natural and comforting ways imaginable. Recognizing my talent for design and visual storytelling, Clara told me about a major digital archiving project her historical society was preparing to launch, one that desperately needed a creative director to make the city's historical records accessible and engaging for the public. She encouraged me to apply, even helping me refine my portfolio late into the afternoon as daylight streamed across her dining room table, reminding me of the skills and value I had forgotten I possessed. In turn, I accompanied her on her afternoon walks to the market and stood by her side whenever she felt anxious about the possibility of Marcus reappearing, giving her the quiet reassurance that someone always had her back. We began sharing meals together in the bright, golden hours of the early evening, laughing over burnt toast and simple pasta dishes, realizing that the overwhelming despair that had once consumed us was slowly being replaced by a gentle, steady hope. The lie I had told in the hallway was gradually morphing into something far deeper and more meaningful than either of us could have anticipated, though neither of us dared to name the growing feelings that lingered in every shared glance and lingering hand-hold. However, life rarely moves forward without testing the strength of new foundations, and our quiet progress was soon confronted by an unexpected storm. One bright afternoon, while I was sitting in the courtyard waiting for Clara to return from a job interview, Marcus appeared once again, but this time he did not come with anger or threats. Instead, he approached me with a polite, measured demeanor, holding a glossy envelope containing a job offer at a high-end marketing firm owned by one of his prominent clients, a position that came with a lucrative salary capable of solving all my financial troubles overnight. He made his proposition with a smooth, calculated smile, suggesting that a talented guy like me deserved a real break, but hinting strongly that this opportunity was contingent on me stepping out of the picture and letting him reconcile with Clara without my interference. Looking at the contract in my hands, I felt a terrible, heavy weight in my chest, realizing that my desperate financial state was being weaponized against the trust Clara had placed in me, forcing me to choose between immediate personal survival and the moral integrity of the bond one was building with her. For a terrifying hour, I sat alone on the sun-drenched bench in the park nearby, battling the deep-seated fears that had haunted me for months. The temptation to take the easy way out, to secure my financial future and escape the constant threat of eviction, pulled fiercely at my resolve, whispering that I was just a broke neighbor pretending to be someone important in her life. But as I thought about Clara's brave smile, the way her hand had felt locked in mine during her most vulnerable moment, and the genuine faith she had shown in my artistic work, I realized that taking Marcus's bribe would destroy the very soul of who I was trying to become. Returning to the apartment building as the afternoon sun reached its highest point, I met Marcus waiting by his luxury car and handed the envelope back to him unopened, telling him firmly that some things in life were not for sale, and that Clara's trust and happiness were worth far more than any price tag he could ever offer. The look of utter disbelief on his face as I turned my back and walked away was a defining moment, breaking the last remaining chains of self-doubt that had kept me trapped in my own perceived inadequacy. When I reached Clara's door and told her everything that had transpired in the courtyard, she stood frozen for a moment, her eyes wide with shock before filling with silent tears of gratitude and awe. She confessed that Marcus had always used his wealth to control the people around him, and that seeing me reject his manipulation for her sake showed her a level of selflessness and courage she had never experienced in her life. In that bright, quiet doorway, surrounded by the warm light of a brand new day, Clara reached out and took my hand once again, but this time there was no threat to hide from and no lie to maintain. She looked directly into my eyes and told me that when she said, "Don't take it back," in the hallway weeks ago, she wasn't just talking about the lie to keep Marcus away, but about the connection, protection, and love that had bloomed between us out of nowhere. Holding her close, I felt a deep, profound peace settle over my heart, knowing that the darkest chapter of my life had finally closed, giving way to a future built on genuine trust, courage, and unconditional support. If you could say one thing to someone who feels completely invisible and overwhelmed by life's hardships today, what message of hope or encouragement would you share with them in the comments below? If this story touched your heart and reminded you that unexpected kindness can transform even our darkest days into bright beginnings, please take a moment to like this video, leave a meaningful comment about the lesson of forgiveness and trust, share this story with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you can remain a cherished part of our community as we continue to share journeys of love, strength, and second chances.